Hi, everyone. Welcome to eBizChat, where it is all about business. I am Rick Zanotti, and I am joined today by my good friend, co-host, and she's wonderful too. It is Dr. Susan Nash. How are you, Susan?
I'm so glad to be here. What a great day.
Oh, good. Great days are good days. And joining us is in studio is Harold Muliati. He's our video producer, and he'll be probably co-hosting with us as well if he jumps in. Here we go. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation. Visit us at www.RELATECasts.net. Thanks.
We are back, and jump in I have.
And he has. And there's a lot of news out there in the financial realm. Susan, we were talking pre-show about the Department of Energy.
Yes. So, production of critical minerals essential for clean energy projects can create jobs in coal and power plant communities. This is what the DOE is saying, and they've awarded $19 million for initiatives to produce rare earth elements and critical minerals. And they've announced the awards, and I'm looking at them now. They are to places like Pennsylvania State University. They've got $1.2 million. Virginia Polytechnic, $1.5 million. Collaborative Composite Solutions Corporation, $1.5 million. New Mexico Institute of Mining. Anyway, it goes on, but those aren't very big awards, really.
No.
They average $1.5 million, but they're more of a statement, I think.
Now, are these going to be research, or are they going to be actual, not only research on the processes and everything, but on actually looking for rare minerals?
Well, let's see. Virginia Polytechnic is talking about fostering regional economic growth by accelerating the extraction and processing of rare earth elements and critical minerals from coal sediments, coal ash, coal refuse and impoundments, acid mine drainage, and other things to Central Appalachia, which that's good.
Also, is there anyone you know that's been involved in it, that's going to be involved in any of this research?
Yes, there is. At the University of Utah, I do know a colleague of mine, or colleague, is at University of Utah, and what they're planning to do, I guess, is I don't know which one she's involved in, but looking at transformation of Uinta Basin earth resources such as coal, oil, shale, resin, etc., into high-value metal, mineral, and carbon-based products. So basically, they're going to a lot of old coal mines and taking all the tailings and scraps and things that you don't want.
Are these active mines, or are these active mines, or not used anymore?
Well, it sounds like they are. Okay, so like University of Texas at Austin plans to quantify coal from mines and coal ash from power plant resources and refuse as feedstock. It sounds like tailings.
Okay. That's interesting. I read something the other day that people in some countries are melting coins because the coins melted sell more for metal than what they're worth if you actually had to buy something with them.
So your nickel is worth like 10 cents.
Is that interesting or what? I have friends who live in Argentina, and they were telling me that right now people are just melting down the coins, making metal out of them, and then they can sell that for more money than what the actual coin is worth by about 4 times. That's really interesting.
Right, and I guess when you have inflation going pretty quickly, then it just happens where, the metal is not going to stay about the same value, but the currency it represents just keeps going down and down.
Yep.
It makes me think of we were not on the show, but we were talking a little bit earlier about the Israeli shekel, and at some point they had changed over from the old shekel to the new shekel. They basically changed it over at a rate of 1,000 old shekels made one new shekel.
Interesting.
So sometimes countries will do that where they just basically redefine their currency based on the old one.
Well, a lot of people, going back in history a little bit, a lot of people don't realize that Israel, back in the early 80s, went through 1,000% hyperinflation. Do you remember that, Susan?
I don't remember that, but I do remember.
There was a very short period. They went through enormous hyperinflation. I don't remember what triggered it, but I remember, wow, that was an interesting 1,000%. I've lived in 300% for a short time. That was pretty hectic. But 1,000%, they said it was just, and it wasn't long, but it was, wow, a lot of inflation. There's a lot of talk right now that we are literally in stagflation. The economy's still sort of stumbling along. It's not really quite awake. Inflation is going up. There's real inflation, and then there's what I would call the fake inflation from the Fed, where it's only 1.5%. But the reality is, when you go buy supermarket foods or anything, they've gone up 20 to 40% in the last probably year. That's not cheap. That's a pretty hefty cost. And a lot of products like cars, there's a scarcity of cars right now, used or new, and they're going up for a premium, which I'm not happy for, because I've got to get a new car or at least a used car or something real soon. It's going to cost a fortune from what I'm reading. So this is something that is causing that stagflation, which means stagnant economy. The economy's not moving that much yet, and you still have inflation, which we may not be dealing with actively, but it's there. We feel it. We feel it in our wallets. What we have does not pay for as much as what it used to.
Well, exactly. And thinking about Harold's point about coins, how would you like to pay for? Well, it kind of reminds me of people who raid their brother's coin collection. And how would you like to get a $20 gold piece in change?
Isn't that weird?
It also makes me think, one of the times when Ed Stewart was on here before, he was saying that, if you start seeing inflation really taking off, you should buy a bunch of peanut butter because it'll last longer than the currency.
Well, and if you look at, so yesterday I caught the edge of this and I stopped reading it because I thought it was just it was from Vox, which sometimes Vox is interesting. But the headline is, "Don't worry about inflation. Why fears of the return to 1970 style inflation are overblown." And I thought, okay, people get paid to write anything.
Yeah, they do. And but we have an interesting concept, not only within Congress and the Fed, but in in the stock companies, as well as just about everybody out there, that, oh no, there's no inflation. But the reality is there is inflation. It's not official inflation.
Well,
but our prices have gone up.
And the thing is, inflation's based on a specific set of goods and various things that you can pay for with money, but that may or may not always represent how the experience is for every person, because every person has to spend money on different things and so on.
Well, the only thing that keeps our inflation low is still the reputational part of it, where it's the trust you have in a particular currency. And to this day, even with all the messes that we've done and the money we've wasted and just whatever with, we still are considered safer than many other countries. So,
because I remember some years back, they were trying to get BRICS going as a another thing that other countries could pin their currency to. That was is it Brazil, Russia, India, China, and is it Saudi?
Saudi, I think, yes.
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So they were trying to form a bloc that would have something that that the other countries would perceive as a more stable currency, but it didn't.
And they weren't economically the most stable or trustworthy countries out there. So people were like, it didn't go anywhere.
Well, people thought that cryptocurrency would potentially destabilize the dollar. because the dollars were used as basically the currency of de facto currency of anybody. And so, and then maybe that will cause inflation to go up if people are actually, the dollars are actually staying in our economy, going out into wherever they go to in traffic.
Well, if you look at half the world uses our dollar as their currency.
Yeah, they just pin their currency to it. And the other thing is, that's the official, but also, unofficially, when you have times when the economies collapse and that sort of thing, like for example, Zimbabwe 2019, essentially you had across the country people were being paid in US dollars because they just didn't trust their own currency. And that happened a lot in Russia in the 90s too, where a lot of people would be using US dollars because they just their currency
definitely.
was that was
it happened in Bolivia. Every place that has had hyperinflation, essentially you'll have a real dollar. You'll have a currency, you're right, that people will use.
And a lot of times that is the US dollar.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And what you were saying about the rare minerals and stuff, it's not directly tied to it, but it kind of brings up something. Harold was saying that prior to the show, that PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, in Northern California is going to replace how many thousand?
Well, so they're going to be changing 10,000 miles of their power lines, primarily in Northern California, and putting them underground in order to try to prevent wildfires.
Now imagine that. Only after how many fires have we had in that area? They're finally going, you know what? Our lines keep burning and falling down. So somebody came up with the incredible idea of putting them underground. It's just miraculous.
That's going to be in Northern California, so I guess for now we'll have to still catch fire every year here. But
that's right.
We'll see.
Well, no, most of our new stuff is all underground. The problem is there's still a lot of, I'm surprised that, when the government wants to do all these infrastructure, that's one of our biggest problems nationwide, that a lot of our power lines and phone lines and everything else is still overground. So anytime you have major storms, whether cold or heat-based, you have a lot of things breaking down. So that would be a good infrastructure project to bring that underground rather than, build bridges to nowhere and all the other fun stuff.
Yeah, but, what do they call that high-speed train project that they put on the ballots in California?
Oh yeah, which hasn't gone. I don't even think they built a foot of track yet.
If they have, it's been a tiny amount, and it's been tens and tens of millions of dollars.
No, billions.
Billions, yeah, it's even been billions.
Yeah, and it hasn't gone anywhere. We're still waiting for the train that got approved from, this is Obama's time frame. They approved a train from L.A. to Las Vegas. Nothing. Zip. How many years has that been? 12? It's about 12, 13 years already. So, these infrastructure projects, the money gets allocated, it probably gets consumed, and not one thing ever happens out of it. So you just go, okay, so where'd that go? I suspect in most of the states that get money, they have a contingency that they can apply it to the legislature if for an emergency, of which they always have. So the money just goes away. Bye-bye.
Yeah, so I just checked, and $9 billion so far.
$9 billion? I don't think they've built anything.
Not as far as I've heard.
I mean, $9 billion to build 300 miles of rail?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
The other thing too, and you and I were talking about this the other day, volatility. So the other day the stock market had this big adjustment, and it was went down 700 or 800 points. Maybe it was more than that. And I thought, well, okay, it'll be a couple of weeks and we'll drag back. We shouldn't panic. Well, it took 2 days, and it regained almost everything. And then just the volatility, and the things that are causing the volatility are things like fear factor, things like Delta variant, Lambda variant. And then when you don't really know.
They were saying masks. Masks had a lot. They don't want to go back to masks, and that dropped the market. It was weird.
Well, because I think what it is, is people are worried that they're going to do another shutdown.
Well, that's because they keep talking about it.
So they're thinking if they shut down, well, I'd better sell all my stuff before then.
Yeah.
Well, and I was thinking today about, this morning I was swimming, and I hadn't really been swimming in a long time until COVID, because I thought, it was always too crowded, and the pool, and plus I was traveling too much. My brother said, "Oh, you should go swimming." I go, "What? It's COVID." It was this last fall.
I don't think you can catch COVID from water. So
well, and plus you're outdoors. Plus you have to reserve a lane. Where he went, you didn't. There weren't that many people. Then so I started going to the University of Oklahoma pool. You have to reserve a lane. So maximum there could be 8 people in the entire pool. And today, for some reason, nobody seemed to want to swim. And I got in at 6:15. By 6:45, I was the only person in a 50-meter pool.
Wow, that's pretty good. Did you win? The key is, did you win?
I barely did. Barely.
Yeah. You put up a good fight.
Also, the chlorine in most pools would probably kill anything, including us. So I wouldn't worry about catching anything in a pool.
It's just so nice, too. It's so nice. And then you get your own lane. You don't even have to, say, "Hey, can we do circles?" Or can we, now there are 2 people, 3 of us, and we do this. I mean, you don't even have to do that kind of business.
Yeah, that's funny.
So I'm kind of okay, I want to keep some of the benefits of having COVID fear around.
That's funny. Now there is one benefit, well, actually not one benefit. There is one company that seems averse to the supply chain, and that's Apple. Yesterday I went to Verizon and I upgraded my old iPad 12.9 to a new iPad 12.9 and ordered it yesterday. They said it would be here next week, and it showed up this morning. I was going, huh?
Wow.
How the heck did they do that? Was that fast? I have no idea where it came from, what warehouse it was in, but literally in less than a day, way less than a day. I think we ordered it at 3. By the time we were done, it's about 3 o'clock yesterday, and this morning at about 10 o'clock they showed up. I was just going, wow, that is amazing. It can happen. So they obviously don't have much of a supply chain issue at this moment. They did about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And that was before COVID or anything. They were having supply chain issues. Not terrible, but they had some. Mostly holiday related. When they go into holidays, they have a holiday right before Christmas, which is their big holiday, and they don't work. And so if you order something from Apple right before Christmas, you're hosed. You have to wait 3 weeks. But that was then. So surprisingly, I couldn't believe they had that much inventory. That ready, boom. The configuration color I wanted, it was there. Somebody's got stock. I'm not sure.
It reminds me, right at the beginning of the pandemic, I decided, their computers are going to be really hard to get because everybody's going to go remote and they're going to be expensive. So I went crazy and bought 3.
You did?
Yes. And the idea was to give one to my son, and I kept. Well, no, I actually did give one to my son, but so now I think, I have one set up in one room, another in a different room, and I just roam around and experience the different feel and touch of these different computers.
Did you buy any Apples?
Yeah, I bought a new, the MacBook, and then I bought a Lenovo Yoga.
Oh, those are nice.
Like that, but
They are nice laptops.
We have one of those. I like it. It's actually a really good computer.
Too, yeah. So anyway.
Now, interestingly enough, we were talking earlier again, pre-show, before you came on, that Intel is really having problems. Interestingly enough, the top chip manufacturer is now really suffering. Apple is beating them. Now, mind you, Apple is nowhere near the size of Intel in terms of the number of chips they use. But Intel can't sell as many chips as they used to. AMD has really refound itself. And the CPU chips, the CPUs are really doing well for AMD right now. The Ryzen chips, they're doing extremely well. Intel's got fast chips, but they're not stellar right now. Nobody thinks they're that fast. And Apple has done a great job with that new M1 chip, and now they have was it M1X? Is that what
the M1X, which is going to be, I think, the MacBook Pro.
It's for the Mac Pro. It's going to be a lot fast for the new iMacs.
Yeah.
It's going to be a much faster chip than even the M1 is, which is, it seems pretty darn quick.
Well, yeah, I would imagine Apple was a pretty big, Intel was probably, that was one of their big vendor contracts, was to provide the stuff for Apple.
Yep.
But now Apple's making, I forget, I mean, I don't know, I assume they're kind of making it themselves, but they must be using another company too. Right?
I'm wondering if they have, if that was partially designed by Qualcomm, which does all their which does a lot of those kind of chips.
Oh wait, no, they actually had some sort of, I think they had some sort of lawsuit with Qualcomm was saying that there was something with that, because the M1s were similar to some of the Qualcomm stuff.
Right.
But I think they had settled out of court.
Well, these are the ARM chips. I think Qualcomm makes the ARM chips, and I think the new M1 is an ARM.
It's ARM architecture based, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about like cars, like NVIDIA graphics cards, NVIDIA cards?
They're struggling a bit too. But they were struggling a bit because, again, they, like that Bitcoin problem they had several years ago, there's a scarcity of silicon out there, or chips, if you will. And so they've had a little bit of a problem. Don't know how much it's affecting them in terms of supply chain, but they have had some issues. What I read recently is that you can get PCs, but it's really hard to get high-end PCs, the really, really fast ones.
I mean, I assume NVIDIA is probably still doing pretty well because they're, everything they can make is getting sold. People are still snapping up, especially high-end video cards.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
I think, but like, okay, so I don't think I've read things, but I still don't think I really understand why there's a chip shortage.
I'm not 100% sure either.
Yeah, I've tried to read a little bit about it, but I'm not sure why exactly.
It must be those chocolate chips. They're gone all the time. Nobody can find them.
Well, I mean, I don't know if they're if it's part of a trade war issue, or if it's part of a.
Well, I think everything's part of that trade war issue now. You almost wonder.
I mean, because the thing I was hearing, last year was the factories are shut down. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much, how far ahead they have to have these things in stock. Maybe it's still because of that, but it seems like it's been a while.
Now, Susan, you read a lot up on this, and you know China fairly well. I keep reading that China economically is really in trouble too. They're not stable. There's a lot of volatility in what they're going through, because while we're having a trade war, we're also the largest buyer of their products. If we stop buying, they die. So it's an interesting war. We can both. It's like mutually exclusive destruction the way they're doing. We don't buy, they die. They don't produce, we die. Okay, who wins? No one.
Well, exactly. And so I just was looking out of curiosity to see about chip shortages, and everybody just says it's due to demand surge. Nothing to do with actually production limitations.
Do you think it had to do with the COVID, where everybody was locked down and people were having to buy tons and tons of new laptops and this and that? Much more.
That's what they're saying. Yeah, that's what they're saying. But I just wonder if there's a little bit more to it. I mean, like the lawsuits and things that are causing.
Right.
Yeah.
We know what's funny. Look at Apple and Samsung. Samsung makes all of the screens on the Apple iPhones, and probably now coming soon on maybe the iPads. I'm not sure about the iPads. iPads aren't OLEDs. They're mini LEDs, a little bit different. But they're similar to OLEDs, which is what they're using on their iPhone. So the high-end iPhones are OLEDs. And those are made by Samsung. Now, Apple, let's see, Samsung sued Apple. Apple sued Samsung over different patent, and then they're each other's largest suppliers. You just have to laugh. Somebody just go, hi.
Oh, I did a little checking. That thing between Apple and Qualcomm was not about the M1 chip. It was about the 5G the 5G
right.
antenna
Okay.
using or something.
Okay, a little bit different.
And other than that, just Qualcomm is they're trying to design a similar sort of chip to compete with the their M series chips.
Oh, are they? Okay. It's interesting.
But in terms of China and their economy, I think things are starting to improve a bit as there are not quite as many backlogs and not so many like transportation issues and problems in the supply chain. But in terms of consumption, yeah, I mean, when you become the manufacturer for the world and you have an economy that must grow, otherwise there's no steady state, it must grow.
Right.
Yeah.
Then you have, I mean, you have to question some kinds of things about information that you just can't get. For example, what is the indebtedness of the different states and the governors, the ability to have different states go into economic stimulus, and they've been using infrastructure for that and for growth.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's still going on. I don't know. There's not much that I can tell, except that there's a lot of hope for increased sales to different emerging countries. But when you think about, like, for example, South Africa completely collapsed in certain parts, and Haiti collapsed. I mean, the smaller countries that were basically feeding a lot of the factories, buying the cheap stuff from China, those markets are kind of like not very strong.
If you look at France, I think France is going to wind up with either a revolution. They've already been warned by the military that if they don't change their lockdown ways, there's going to be a problem. And now they lock down even further. There have been hundreds and hundreds of thousands protesting all over the cities in France.
Still?
France is going to be very unstable very soon, and that's going to be interesting. England's having some issues. Well, they're sort of stuck between Brexit and a hard place, I think. I'm not sure what's going to happen there. I don't think anybody's really quite sure. And there are other countries that want to get out of the EU. Hungary's been threatening to get out now, and there may be some other ones. Europe's a mess, but they just don't talk about it. So we'll see what happens with Europe in the near future. But they're kind of not doing that well. People are not that happy in Europe. So it will be interesting to see what happens in the next 2 to 5 years with Europe.
Isolationism is challenging, and I was talking on Monday with some colleagues who are in Australia. They're geologists, and they were talking about not only can you not leave the country, you can't even travel from state to state.
No, it's getting worse.
Yeah, it's getting worse. And again, isolationism isn't a formula for growth or success or anything.
No.
I mean, ever. Like Silk Road and from every like Aztec trade routes. I mean, everybody grows through trade.
Yeah, strange.
Well, Rick, I think you've got to get going. It's
about that time.
And we're at about the end of our
anyway,
show.
if you're watching the show and you would like us to cover any topics or you have any comments to make on what is going on in our illustrious economy worldwide, please send us some messages and we'll talk about some of those subjects. And you can always come join us live either on LinkedIn, Facebook, or I think that's it, right? We're not on YouTube live right now. We'll show.
We are actually.
Oh, we are live on YouTube.
I don't see anyone in there right now.
Okay, so everyone's quiet. Shh. The silence is deafening. So, yes, definitely get in touch with the show. We'd love to hear from you and just talk about things like that.
Absolutely.
Yep. So, Susan, we will see you next week on eBizChat again. And you're doing a trade show. You're doing your show next week, right?
Yes, this first one that's going to be in person for a long time.
Well, that's good. It is in person.
18 months. Yes, in Houston.
That's good. That's the AAPG Worldwide Conference?
Yes, it's a combination of AAPG and then engineers, SPE, and geophysicists, SEG, or just like, and other societies coming together.
Well, that's great. Well, we wish you, I know you manage a lot of that and you handle a lot of the events and all sorts of stuff. So
well,
congratulations.
I know people are going to be excited to get back. Just be careful around all the indoor fireworks and drunken revelers.
Engineers, you know.
It should be fun.
Well, good luck on the show. I know you're going to knock them dead with it. And we'll see all of you next week on eBizChat. Thank you much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.